Hey everyone, I'm going to be your teacher for Motion 1, and today we're going to be introducing the After Effects interface. This is going to be really useful since our very first assignment is going to be a looping animation. So we'll make a really simple loop today using this little green ball. So first of all, let's get started with the different panels here in After Effects. The first one that I want to talk about is the composition window. The composition window is where all of your stuff is located, basically. So if you had music imported into here, it would be over here. All of your comps will be over here. These are called composition or comps for short. And you can also create folders if you would like to organize things, or if you're super OCD like me. So this down here at the very, very bottom, they're a little bit hard to see on the screen because they're super tiny, but this is the composition button. And you can create a composition and edit things about it. You can create yourself a little folder to put your stuff in. Like you could create a folder called sound and put all of your sound clips in there. This is actually interpret footage. You're not going to use that very much. And we also have a little trash can just like in Photoshop. I want you to try to get it solidified in your head that After Effects is really just Photoshop that moves. A lot of the same panels exist in After Effects and they have very similar layout as well. So right here is the composition panel. As you can see, I've got circle. This is the little circle that I made out of a solid, and this is comp 1. That is my movie clip with my circle inside of it. So next up we have our timeline panel down here at the bottom. So this timeline panel will show you where you are, of course, in time. We have the little second value here that I'm circling with my mouse. And if let's just say if I wanted to skip to second 1, I could just type 1 right here and it automatically jumps there in our timeline. That's going to be really important when you're jumping around and creating keyframes. So bear in mind, you can always skip to a second or a frame by typing it right in here to the timeline. So I'm going to skip back to 0, 0, the very, very beginning of my composition. So here we have our little green ball, and this is the preview panel. So the preview panel shows you basically what is going on in your animation. So if I had a animation in here, I don't yet, it would preview that when I hit the space bar. So when I hit space bar, what's going to happen is, as you can see, my little time cursor is moving forward. This shows us where we are in our composition, and if there are animation happening up here, then it would move forward in time with that animation. So that's what the timeline does. You can drag this little guy around, and this is called scrubbing through footage. So this is the timeline panel, this is the preview window, this is the project panel. Let's talk about the effects panel. The effects panel is over here on the right hand side, and it has all of the pre-installed effects in it. So here's some animation presets. We have things like text. So if we wanted to make a text animation, that's where we would find all of those. We'll talk about that a little bit later on, but just know this is where your effects panel is located. And we can essentially drag and drop effects onto the timeline or onto an object here down into the bottom of our timeline. So our effects and presets panel is right here. We also have some really useful things like color editing. We have distortions. We have all kinds of things over here in the effects panel. We also have a character menu, and this character and paragraph menu should look just like the one that you're used to in Illustrator and in Photoshop. And so it functions just like that. You can change the typeface if you want to, the size of it. And we won't be doing that today, but later on when we get to text animation, we'll definitely be using the character menu. Okay, now that we've got those things solidified in our minds, let's take a look at creating our very first looping animation. So we're starting here with everything all cleared out. Let's make ourselves 2 comps. We need a comp that is going to be the length of our looping animation, and we need a comp that is going to allow it to loop a few times. So I'm going to create 2 compositions, and one of them is going to be 2 seconds long, and one of them is going to be 10 seconds long. So I'm going to go ahead and create a composition. I know you can't see the contextual menu, but we're going to be creating just a regular old HD 1920 by 1080 composition here. And as you can see, now I've got a composition that's got about 10 seconds inside of it here. We've got our 2-second composition, we need our 10-second composition, new composition, and we're going to go ahead and create a 10-second composition. So let's rename this 10 seconds. And we'll rename this 2 seconds. Alright, so our 2-second composition is going to contain our loop, and then we're going to put that composition inside of the 10-second one, and then make that composition loop. So in order to get this going, what we need to do is to go inside of the 2-second composition, so you can see if I hit the space bar, that it's only about 2 seconds long. Let's create a looping animation. So the first thing that you're going to need is a ball. Go up to your ellipse tool here, and I'm just going to create an ellipse in the center, or roughly the center of my composition here. So right now my ellipse is going to be going from side to side, so what I need is the position for the ellipse. So if you hit P on the keyboard with anything selected, it will bring up the property position. I'm going to skip back to second 0, 0 in my timeline, and we're going to keyframe the position of that. So our position of our circle needs to be scooted over here to the left, so I'm just selecting it and doing that with my arrow keys. By the way, if you would like for your center point to actually be in the center of your circle, you can go grab your pan behind tool, that's this one here, and then move it over into the center. I like to do that before I do any more keyframing. So we've got our position keyframed. You can see that because it's got a little blue diamond here. I'm going to move to second 1. All right, I just typed that into the current time indicator, and I'm going to scoot this all the way over to the right side of the screen. Okay, just doing that with my arrow keys. You could also click and drag it with the mouse. I just do it with the arrow keys so I know it's moving directly over. So now I've got, here we go, our ball is moving over like that. If I hit spacebar, I can preview what's going on in the preview panel. So I want it to return to right back to where it was. So what I'm going to do is to copy this keyframe. I'm going to skip to the end of my comp by dragging this little time cursor guy, and I'm going to paste that keyframe over here. There we go. Now we have a little ball that's bouncing back and forth like a 90s screensaver. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to add an ease to these so it's not such linear motion. We tend to perceive linear motion as kind of mechanical, so I want it to actually speed up and slow down. The way that you can get that going is to add an ease to these keyframes here. So if I select one of the keyframes, I'm going to option click on there. You should get a contextual menu. Down at the bottom of that contextual menu, it should say Keyframe Assistant. What we're going to select is Easy Ease. So it's going to turn our Keyframe Assistant Easy Ease. It's going to turn our keyframes into these little hourglass shapes. You can also get to this by pressing F9 if you're a keyboard shortcut person. Alright, so now our ball is speeding up and slowing down, and it looks much more natural as it's going back and forth. So we have our comp looping. We have it looping in the window because it's just playing it back and forth, but it isn't actually a looped clip yet. We need a teensy bit of Python in order to make that happen. So I'm going to go to the 10-second comp. So here's our 10-second comp. You can see that if I press spacebar. Really exciting stuff. It takes 10 seconds to elapse. So what I'm going to do is to drag our 2-second clip of our ball going back and forth into our 10-second clip. So as you can see, if I zoom in a little bit, this is the zoom down here at the bottom, by the way, that it's about 2 seconds long. I'm going to zoom back out. So we're going to treat this just like we would any other movie clip. So you can loop anything in After Effects, really. What I need to do is to turn on something called time remapping. So I'm going to control click on this comp that says 2 seconds, and I'm going to go to time. This is another contextual menu, enable time remapping. So once I've got that going, as you can see, I can actually move the length of my clip out here. So now what's going to happen is the ball is going to bounce back and forth, and then it's going to stop. So the reason that that disappeared is because the end of our clip needs to be fixed. I'm going to go inside of our comp here, and here's our little shape layer number 1. I'm going to make sure that my shape is going slightly beyond the boundaries of our composition. That should fix that little problem. So now our ball should go back and forth, and then it should stop. Okay, so in order to get this looping, what we need to do is to click on our stopwatch. So if we hold in Option and we click on our stopwatch, it should turn all these little numbers red. What we've done is enable the time remapping to be looped. So this, you can do this with any property, by the way. You can do it with scale or position, but right now what we're doing is essentially looping the time. And we're going to do a tiny little bit of coding. So loop out. So I'm going to type loop out, open parentheses. You need to camel case that. That is a capital letter O. So loop out with open and close parentheticals. And so now what that's going to do is to infinitely loop our clip here. And so congratulations, you have just looped your very first clip. Since your assignment is to make a loop, you're going to be doing this with probably an entire animation. So you'll do about maybe 2 or 3 seconds of a very simple animation, longer if you want, and you will loop it just like this. So you can use this command for basically anything. So I hope you've enjoyed our tutorial of our little bouncing ball. We made a loop in After Effects together. I'll also be sending out some helpful tutorials from other online sources, just in case you didn't quite get the grasp of this one. What I want you to concentrate on, though, is to go ahead and create your storyboard for your looping animation and start with your color palette and your illustration. So look at that first check-in for the assignment, and I guess I will see you next time.